Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have the next story from The World's Worst Monsters by David Walliams, Mummy the Mummy. When is a mummy not a mummy? When the mummy is in fact a mummy. Please indulge me for one moment. Let's begin this horror story with a history lesson. This is a mummy, an ancient Egyptian who after death had been mummified to prepare them for the afterlife. The priests of the time would remove all the insides except the heart, embalm the body to preserve it, and then wrap it from head to toe in strips of linen, until it was completely covered. These mummies were discovered thousands of years later by archaeologists, who found their tombs buried deep under the sand in the deserts of Egypt. Legend has it that disturbing these burial sites causes ancient curses to be unleashed. Many of the archaeologists died in mysterious circumstances. Some even believed that if you unearthed these mummies, they came back to life as monsters. Now, this is also a mummy. This is Jess's mummy. Jess is a little girl in glasses who loves her mummy, even though she is the clumsiest person on earth. Jess's mummy was a lovely lady who wore brightly coloured dresses and big flowery hats. This was just as well, as you could see her coming from a mile away. Every time she had a mishap, she said, "Whoopsies!" Mummy was a one-woman disaster zone. Stepping inside the house from a rainstorm, Mummy closed her umbrella on her head. She couldn't see a thing. Snutch! Whoopsies! Mummy stumbled through the house and into the back garden. There she stepped into the pond. Sploosh! Whoopsies! Impatiently waiting for a piece of toast to pop out of the toaster, Mummy found herself peering in. The piece of toast shot up and whacked her on the nose. Bonk! Whoopsies! Shoving a heavy book onto the wrong shelf at the library, Mummy set off a chain reaction. Every single book toppled over like dominoes, burying her under a mountain of books. Funk! Whoopsies! Repairing a vase that she had broken, Mummy managed to superglue her dress to the table without realising. Gloop! When she stood up and walked away, her dress stayed stuck to the table. Rip! Mummy stood there in her undercrackers. Whoopsies! Once Mummy got her shampoo bottle and her tomato ketchup bottles mixed up. So she ate some shampoo-flavoured chips. Yuck! And her hair turned bright red. Whoopsies! Placing a box of cereal in her supermarket trolley, Mummy toppled in. Plunk! The force of her fall sent the trolley speeding down the aisle. Whiz! It knocked over shoppers as it zoomed. Boink, boink, bonk. And all the time, Mummy's legs waggled in the air. Whoopsies! Mummy mistook her slice of chocolate cake for the telephone. When she heard a ring, she pushed the cake to her ear instead. Squelch! Whoopsies! A year later, Mummy was still finding cake crumbs in her ear. Still, it made for a handy snack while riding the bus, much to the horror of her fellow passengers. Leaning over the safety barrier too far at the zoo, Mummy plunged into the penguin pool. The poor lady couldn't hoist herself out of the water. Mummy ended up splashing around in there for the best part of a year, surviving only on a diet of raw fish. Squawk, squawk, squawk! Whoopsies! Her daughter Jess couldn't be more different from her. She was a shy, studious girl who had been learning about ancient Egypt in school. Everything about the subject electrified her. The gold death masks, the pyramids, the Sphinx, the River Nile, the tombs, the Valley of the Kings, the invention of toothpaste, and clocks, and calendars, and paper, and ink, and police. The sagas of the royal families and pharaohs, the more than 700 symbols of hieroglyphs or ancient writing with pictures, that everyone wore makeup, the female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, who wore a fake beard, the 2,000 and more gods and goddesses they worshipped, the bathing in sour milk, the fact that ancient Egyptians believed that cats were sacred and often mummified them too. However, at the top of Jess's list were, of course, the mummies. She even had a fantastical dreams about the curses. Jess imagined these mummies coming back to life to wreak revenge on those who had disturbed their final resting place. She was absolutely fascinated by them and longed to see one in real life. So on the eve of her birthday, Jess pleaded, "Mummy, please, 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 can you take me to the British Museum for my birthday so I can see the mummies with my own eyes?" "Darling, please, no. Those things give Mummy the willies," replied her mother, putting down her book, which was upside down. "Please." "No, can't we go to the circus instead?" "The last time we went to the circus, Mummy, you got tangled in the high wire act and ended up smashing into the side of the tent and bringing the entire thing crashing to the ground." "A minor mishap," chirped Mummy. "I know. How about we visit the fair?" "Our last trip to the fair was an even greater catastrophe." "I haven't the foggiest as to what you are talking about, Jessica." Jess rolled her eyes. "Have you forgotten what happened on the bumper cars?" Mummy shrugged. "You went far too fast, smashed through the barrier and crashed into the big wheel, knocking it off its axis," continued Jess. "Well, I'm sure some of those people enjoyed having a free roll across the park. They were screaming with delight." They were screaming for their lives as a gigantic metal wheel rolled after them, said Jess. I know, let's go to the water slides. Jess couldn't believe her ears. Mummy, you have a lifetime ban from the water slides. Do I? Asked Mummy, trying to sound innocent. Yes, you tried to go up the water slides rather than down them. How was I meant to know? A dozen people were rushed to hospital that day, including you. All I did was break every bone in my body. A lot of fuss about nothing, if you ask me. Huffed Jess. It's my birthday and I want to go to the British Museum. But you must promise me, Mummy, to be on your absolute best behaviour. No more disasters. As if. Mummy? I promise, replied Mummy with a big, broad smile, one that Jess couldn't share. So the very next morning, mother and daughter set off on the train to the museum. It was still early, but Mummy had already managed to sit on her daughter's birthday cake, resulting in it sticking to her bottom. Squelch! Whoopsies! Accidentally cover Muddles, the family dog, in wrapping paper instead of Jess's present. Whoopsies! Rustle. And sing happy birthday in such a high voice that all the windows in the house cracked. Crack! Whoopsies! Despite all this, Jess was sure that a trip to the British Museum was going to make today the best birthday ever. Little did she know the whirlwind of chaos and destruction her Mummy was about to unleash on the world. As soon as the pair arrived at the grand building, Mummy announced she needed the loo. It's just there, said Jess, pointing to a door. I'll be in the Mummy room. Of course, dear, replied Mummy, scuttling off to the ladies. Stepping into the Mummy room, Jess was struck silent with awe. All around the room were ornate coffins standing upright. Each one contained an ancient Egyptian mummy. Next to these coffins were treasures from their tombs that they believed they would need in the afterlife. Now Mummy had a bad habit of using up all the toilet paper in the house. That is because she always tugged too hard on the end of the roll, and the entire thing would unspool. This is precisely what she did in the museum toilet cubicle. Mummy yanked on the end, and the bumper-sized roll began unspooling at speed. Whoopsies! In her futile attempts to roll the paper back into place, Mummy managed to tangle herself up in it. The more she struggled, the worse it became. Soon she was covered from head to toe in toilet paper. Mummy now looked exactly like a mummy. As she stumbled out of the cubicle with her arms outstretched, the ladies at the basin screamed in horror. A mummy! Ah! Oh! Mummy, the mummy, tried to speak, but her words were muffled by the toilet paper stuck in her mouth. All you could hear were scary-sounding moans. Oh! Mummy's eyes were completely covered, so she couldn't see where she was going. She stumbled into the museum, grabbing visitors and holding on to them tightly for fear of falling over. The poor souls wriggled out of her grip and ran for their lives. No! It's alive! The mummy will kill us all! Now Mummy the mummy was lumbering along the corridor of the museum in the direction of the mummy room where the mummies were. As Mummy stumbled forward, she bumped into a marble statue of emperors, toppling them to the ground. Crunch! She swept priceless Roman vases off their shelves with her outstretched arms. Smash, crash, bang, and then staggered into a security guard. Boof! The man had been enjoying a crafty snooze in his chair, but now woke up to find a mummy crashing into him. Ah! Moaned Mummy the mummy. Ah! Cried the security guard as he fled down the corridor, tears streaming down his face. Jess was completely immersed in the ancient world of wonder when the bandaged figure shuffled into the room. Behind her. As all the other visitors around her ran off, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned around slowly to see this mummy. Well, her mummy. Well, her mummy dressed as a mummy, who of course she thought was a mummy, despite it being her mummy, behind her. Ah! Screamed the girl. Ah! Moaned Mummy the mummy. It's true. There is a curse. Jess picked up the nearest weapon she could find, a leaflet on ancient Egypt, and brandished it in the direction of the mummy. Don't come any closer, or I will be forced to poke you repeatedly with this leaflet. Tripping on the toilet paper wrapped around her shoes, Mummy the mummy stumbled forward. I did warn you, exclaimed Jess. She tried to poke the mummy with the leaflet, but all that happened was that the paper bent. Crunkle. Oh, murmured the girl, but then she had a better idea. She grabbed hold of the end of what she assumed was linen, but of course bog roll, and yanked hard. Yunk! Take that, Mummy! She cried. In an instant, Mummy the mummy began spinning wildly. Whizz! As the toilet paper twirled off, she twirled around the room, colliding with the ancient coffins holding the real mummies. Funk, funk, funk. One by one, the coffins toppled off their plinths and crashed to the ground. Smash, smash, smash. Even the little coffin containing the mummified cat broke. Smish. Shards and splinters of wood were scattered across the floor. Now all the mummies had been well and truly woken from their eternal sleeps. The mummified cat also began to stir. Meow. With the roll of toilet paper now unfurled on the museum floor, Mummy was finally free, if more than a little dizzy. "Mummy!" exclaimed Jess. "I thought you were a real mummy come to life." "Oh no," chuckled her mother. "I just had a fight with a roll of toilet paper." Jess rushed over to Mummy and gave her the biggest hug. "Oh, I'm so relieved," she sighed. What Mummy could see, but her daughter could not, was that the real mummies lying on the floor of the museum were twitching into life. Jessica?" "Yes?" "Don't be too relieved, because I think your mummy has made another boo-boo. Whoopsies! Double whoopsies and triple whoopsies." Jess spun around. She couldn't believe what she saw. A dozen ancient mummies were rising to their feet and stumbling towards them with their hands outstretched. Even the mummified cat was approaching. "Hiss! Whoopsies!" said Mummy. The mummies began trying to grab at the pair. "Ugh!" they moaned. It was terrifying. From under the bandages, their eyes shone red like demons. Glow. "No!" screamed Jess as a mummified hand gripped onto her arm. "Get off me!" "What shall we do?" cried Mummy, who had a mummified hand on her shoulder. "Let me think." Jess was smart, and her brain pinged with an idea so clever, even she was shocked by her own genius. "I know. Grab one end of the toilet roll, and I will grab the other." "Righty-ho," said Mummy. "Then what?" "Wrap them all up in it." That is exactly what they did. The pair each took an end of the roll and ran around the museum in huge circles, wrapping the mummies in paper so they couldn't come any closer. The mummified cat was clever though, and it ducked out of the way and hid behind a statue. Meanwhile, the mummies were bound up together, and they couldn't move a millimetre. "Such a clever girl," said Mummy. "I know," joked Jess. At that moment, some security guards, who were braver than the crying one, came bursting into the room. "Whoopsies! Time to leave," whispered Mummy. She took her daughter's hand and they slunk out of the museum, not even stopping at the gift shop. The gift shop, as we all know, is always the best part of any museum. Where else would you buy a vastly overpriced eraser? Yes, things were that serious. It was only when Jess was being tucked into bed that night that she remembered something. The cat. "The what?" asked Mummy. "The mummified cat in the museum. It came back to life, but we didn't wrap it in toilet roll. I'm sure the security guards have found it." "I do hope so," replied Jess, her brow wrinkled with worry. "So, Jessica, did you have a lovely birthday?" "Well, apart from you being wrapped head to toe in a roll of toilet paper, destroying most of the precious artefacts in the museum, and bringing some ancient Egyptian mummies back to life, yes." Mummy smiled. "Whoopsie-doopsie-doo." She bent down to kiss her daughter on the head, but slipped on Jess's slipper and fell on top of her instead. "Oof!" exclaimed Jess. "Whoopsies! So sorry, darling." "Don't worry, Mummy. I love you, and I always will." "I love you too. Sweet dreams, my beautiful angel." Mummy then managed to trip over Jess's other slipper and fell headfirst into the light switch. Dumph! "Whoopsies!" The force of the blow turned the light off. As Mummy closed the door, she trapped her nightdress inside. Rip! Ripping the whole thing off. "Whoopsies!" came a voice from the other side of the door. "Not again! I'm all in the nudie nudes." Her daughter couldn't help but burst into laughter. She felt so lucky having the funniest mummy in the world. Tired, Jess rolled over onto her side to sleep. Just as her eyes flickered shut, she heard a gentle tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap. Jess slid out of bed and tiptoed over to investigate. Peeping through the gap in the curtains, she could see something perched on the ledge. It was the mummified cat from the museum, its eyes glowing red like a demon. "Whoopsies," whispered Jess. This was no nightmare. This was really happening. And that is the end of that story by David Walliams from The World's Worst Monsters. I'll be back soon with the next story from this fantastic compilation and many more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.